And so I saved y'all some time on the video. And I kind of tore apart most of it. I'm just start with these valve cover bolts. You're gonna want to loosen up this harness and the little bracket here that holds on the power steering high pressure line. And the dream is to be able to get these bolts out nice. I already took the coil plugs out. Once you get them loose, you should be able to kind of get them by hand. Just remember, the short one goes on the topmost near the intake. I think there's only two short ones in here. One for the front, one for the rear. These are a little tight today. Sitting here trying to figure out the best way to get to this one. It's kind of in the way here, everything. So I don't want to break nothing, and I don't want to take off nothing extra. That's it. There we go. And two in the back. It's still quite tight. It's kind of a pain. It's a 10 though. I think a smaller ratchet would help. Valve cover bolts go to 8.8 foot-pounds. However, you might not want to go all the way to 8.8. Otherwise, the rubber seems to break on the seals if you go that tight. Maybe 8's fine. I think I've seen a manual say 7. But the actual Newton meter torque spec is like 8.5. This one's kind of a pain to snake out, that's why I picked this one, but to record. And we're doing the lost motion assembly, by the way. The bolts on top of the rocker shaft are 12s. Crack them all loose before you do anything with them because they're under spring pressure. You don't want the shaft to warp with whatever little chance it has to warp. Doesn't hurt to break them loose first, and then go from there. I was thinking about replacing valve springs on this side, but it's evident that the wire harness pretty much needs to come off for that. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to loosen them up more by hand. There's one tight one in there. The spring pressure seems to be coming from the driver's side right now. It'll be different depending on where your motor's sitting. Like in what time the motor's in. Once you get them loose, don't drop them in the motor. Because if you drop them in the motor, you're gonna have a bad time. If you drop them in the motor, there's a slight chance you'll have to take the oil pan off to get them back. Just taking the intake off. Intake rocker shaft. Keep the bolts safe. Get that rocker shaft off carefully without dropping the pins that lock in that extra rocker arm. I don't want anything dropping in. We got the P2R lost motion assembly. So I get that on camera here. You want the solid cap part going up and the empty part going down into the motor. And what you want to do is when you take the old one out, take the oil and drizzle the top of it with oil. Because you don't want it dry. Luckily the old ones are full of oil, so you can kind of get them nice and oiled up. And then I'm going to go throw them on a rag so they're not putting oil everywhere. Once you got those in, just rest that rocker shaft back on top. Watch out for those pins too. Those VTEC pins like to come out, so keep an eye on them. Feels like a circus trying to get this on. It's under spring pressure, so it's not going to be perfect yet. Just kind of get them lined up. And start the bolts always, like going into aluminum. The intake bolts have IN imprinted on them. The exhaust bolts have EX imprinted on them. Once you get them in, just kind of snug them down as best you can. manual says to make sure there's oil there to lubricate the bolts as you put them in. It said fresh oil on the threads and the skirt of the bolt, I believe. Just to make sure everything's lubricated when it goes in so you get a proper torque spec. I believe the torque spec on that is 24 Newton meters. Get it snugged up on that pin. There's 2 alignment pins, and make sure that it's lined up with it, because you don't want it to go wrong. And then just kind of get them snug by hand first. That way you don't break nothing. I got my torque wrench set to 24 Newton meters on a 12 millimeter socket. You should start from the center and work your way out. I'm getting kind of lazy here already. This is the second one, and I always go over them twice anyway. And I snugged them up first right off the bat, but I'm going to check it from center. This would be a medium-sized torque wrench. You could probably use a small one too. And once they're all snugged up, big challenge of getting the valve cover back on. Be careful not to rip the spark plug holes seal. Get on there right like that. Remember there's 2 different sizes of bolts here. There's only 2 different sizes. Yeah. Trying to get the GoPro to react, but it goes to make it difficult. There we go. There's only 2 different sizes. You got the short one and the long one. The short one always goes towards the intake, as close to the intake as you can. The rest of them get the long bolt. There's only 2 short bolts in a kit and 8 long bolts in a kit. 4 long bolts on each one, and then 1 short one on each one. Those will be torqued down to 8.8 foot-pounds. But like I said, I'd probably go 8. I wouldn't push 8.8. And I'm not torquing them, I'm just going them down until they stop. The rubber should hold them in. Give them enough friction. They're a little tricky to see, so it's kind of by feel. Back one's tricky. Got it. There is a sequence on this too, but I get them all hand started, and I go until just about they stop. You don't want them too tight. wire harness bolts are starting. Leave that bracket for last, make it easier on yourself. Throw the coil packs in right now too. This is a 3.5, it's got nuts instead of bolts for the coil packs. Those I just put snug, I don't put on extra tight because if they decide to corrode, you'll never get them back off. They're also 10mm. I believe the torque spec on that is also 8.8 foot-pounds. Along with these 10mm wire harness bolts. .8 foot-pounds, I just put them snug though. They don't need an excess torque. Another one of those things that you don't want to put in so tight you can't get it off. And then we're going to do this bracket here. Another 10mm, going to be 8.8 foot-pounds. It's supposed to kind of hold the power steering line, but this one doesn't really want to, so whatever. And on top of the rocker arm torque specs, the valve cover bolts are in fact 8.8 foot-pounds or 12 Nm. The adjuster nut for the valve lash is going to be 20 Nm, which I found listed at 15 foot-pounds, but that could be a little off. I recommend the 20 Nm. The intake valve lash is going to be 0.2 of a millimeter and 24 hundredths of a millimeter. So that's going to be 0.2 millimeter to 0.24 millimeter. And then the exhaust valve lash is going to be 0.28 millimeter to 0.32 millimeter. And the rocker arm shafts 24 Nm, or as listed 18 foot-pounds. And then the intake I never looked at torque specs because I'm not trying to break my magnesium intake, so I just put them on until they're snug, and everything else is more or less custom. So have a good one, take care. It was Asa.